And my sister said, Mom like hit my dad and said, we are not going to do that. We are going to enjoy our lives and we are not going to cry. We're not going to be sad because this is my battle to fight. This is what I was given and we're going to just go with it.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Hello. Welcome to today's episode. Today, I am so happy to have my new friend Saundra on our podcast today. Saundra Heimark. Did I say that right? Because I
Yes.
just practiced your last name. Okay. I've only called you by your first name. So Saundra Heimark. And we met through social media, through Instagram. You reached out to me, was it not? You reached out
Yes.
to me.
Mhm.
Yes, you reached out to me. And then she said, listen, I've gone through some stuff this year. It may be something you'd want to have on your podcast. And I was like, absolutely. I'm like, so you've been through a lot. So just so you guys know, as listeners, we're going to span a few different types of loss because this year has been a year of a lot of changes in your life. And a lot of these changes too, for you listeners, you're going to relate to a lot of these things too, because we're not just going to be talking about grief in terms of death. We're going to talk about different types of grief that occur in changes. So, welcome, my dear.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so glad you are, and thank you for being a listener too, because that's really how you approached me, right? You first listened,
Yes.
and then you reached out.
Yes. I wanted to kind of feel the vibe and see what types of guests you had on. And it really fit with, my experiences, and everyone's experience is different, but it really
Mm.
hit the nose on the head with what I'd been going through this year and gratitude being a theme. So,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, even with all the hardship, kind of maintaining your gratitude even in those hardships and changes that were happening.
yeah.
So let's just go quickly, say a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where you live? And what you do and right now, and then we'll do the whole 180, whatever, I don't know, 180 or 36, whatever. We'll do the whole route here around the world, around the world to hear your story.
Sure. So I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, born and raised, and then I moved to California in 2014. So I've been in the LA area for about wow, has it been 6 years already? Um,
Mhm.
6 years, and
When were you working? Did you move there for work
I
or
did not.
for?
I came out here without a job. I just had some savings and banked on getting a job. And yeah, it kind of all fell into place. I think I had kind of this vision of when I was visiting my sister, who my older sister lives out here, and she has lived out here for many, many years. She's 11 years older than me. So um, I had visited her every summer when I was in even like middle school, high school. And I always told myself after college, I'm going to move out there too. I'm going to make the move. I'm going to do it. Whether I have a job or not, I'm just going to do it. So that's what I did. I saved up some money and
You were.
I felt too, I don't know how to say this, but too big for the Philadelphia area. Everything was the same. Everyone was settling down in Philly, and I just felt like I want a completely different experience. I want to experience new things. want to get out of this bubble. So, yeah.
Mhm. What you just said reminded me of a quote I posted today of Maya Angelou on Instagram. Let me see. I posted this one. Um, and then it says, if you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. And it felt like that, like what you just mentioned. It's kind of like if you would stay there and kind of just did what everybody else was doing, kind of just stay in your own little bubble, you would be normal.
Right.
but but you
I'm far
you
from
wanted to
normal,
just
that's
kind
for sure.
of you, yeah, and so you just wanted to kind of spread your wings and kind of find yourself, and California was the place.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, with the job, because a lot of times people move to California because they're actors. I mean, I lived in California for many years, and that's why. But because I was in,
Yeah.
studying theater and stuff. But so yeah, so it's always good to know the why. So what did you study?
So I went to college back in Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half from my parents' home. I studied communication and um, business management. So I majored in communication studies, minored in business management. And it was the type of communication studies that's interpersonal. So nonverbal communication, organizational communication, gender communication, all the types of psychological communication, basically,
Hmm.
which is kind of a general. I mean, it was a Bachelor of Science. It's general. It's a general degree that I felt like is useful in any job. So,
And so, what kind of job did you end up finding when you first moved to LA?
so I was in corporate for until very recently. So I've had a corporate job pretty much since I started working in college, in summers in college. Um, I had moved up from receptionist to administrative assistant to executive assistant, and I've worked through all types of companies, small companies, large companies, nonprofits. So I was aiming for corporate when I first moved out here, and
Hmm.
I got a job within 4 weeks, and it was in downtown LA. It was, I mean, it was on the 40th floor of a building. I was looking at the Hollywood sign across the distance, and I could see Santa Monica over on the other side. Like it was pretty much
Like you
picture
made it. You,
perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like it was like, this is it, but it did not. I mean, that was my first taste of LA, and it wasn't really, that downtown part was not for me. The city, I don't
Hmm.
care for the city much. It's not my scene. But I've learned a lot. So I mean, from there I moved on to another um, another small stint job. It was kind of temporary jobs until I could find my place. And so I would take
Hmm.
anything kind of that felt like it would be a fit. So I took, someone who was out on maternity leave. I took their spot for an architecture company. Then I got to Taco Bell corporate, and I worked in the legal department there for 3 years. I ended up staying there for 3 years, and they had hired me full time. And so that part was great. I had such a fun time working at Taco Bell corporate. And because that was in Orange County, I decided to move closer to that and get out of LA. I was in Redondo Beach, but I ended up moving to Huntington Beach, and so yeah, I've lived in LA, and then I lived in Orange
And all the
County,
surrounding
and
areas.
now I'm in
Yeah,
back in LA County, but I'm more towards the beach, so that's where I think
totally.
is my little spot.
Wow. So yeah, so you've definitely lived in a lot of places, moved in a lot of places, kind of moved your way into different types of jobs and there. And now take us a little bit then into what happened then at the end of last year. You then decided to, while you were in that temp job, then you ended up getting a job interview that was a pretty surreal type of job interview. So take us into that chapter.
Yes, so I got the opportunity to interview with Kobe Bryant, and he has still has a small production company called Granity Studios, right in Orange County. And my agency said, I think he would be a really great fit for this opportunity. And I didn't really believe her at first that it was Kobe. And I was like, wait, are you serious? Like, what?
Yeah, is it
Um,
or a double, what do you call it? A double
yeah,
gang,
like
or
a
like another
look-alike.
person with the same name, another person with the same name
Yeah,
or something,
yeah,
but that
yeah.
Mhm.
So um, it was
This is December, by the way, because this will come out probably this is December 2019
correct.
that you had that. Okay.
Yes, actually, a year from 3 days,
Right
three
now
days
that we're
from now.
speaking. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're speaking in December, but this
Yep.
won't be yeah, this will be launched afterwards. But yeah, that so a year ago from today.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whoa.
So I
Okay.
had my first interview. I did not have my first interview with him. I had my first interview with his chief marketing officer, Molly. So that was great. I got to sit down with her and kind of get more on the background of what the company was and kind of hear more about Kobe from her perspective and what he's like and if it would, align with me. Um, and I actually walked out of that interview not knowing if it really was going to be a fit, but I kept saying to myself, like, this is huge. Like, I think if they like me and they want to move forward with me, I think I'll give it a try if they choose to interview me further. And I really didn't think anything of it. I just kind of was like, I don't know. Um, was feeling really on the fence about it. But a few days later, my agency called me back and said, Molly loved you and Kobe wants to meet you. And I was like, okay, well, I can't pass that up. I mean, like, I really felt like, okay, this, just go along with it, right? Go with the flow, um, and meet with him. So I met with him and Molly, um, and she kind of sat there and kind of directed the conversation a little bit, but he had my resume in front of him and was looking at all the stuff I'd done and was just saying how impressive of a resume I have and that, he's from Philly too. So the fact that, we kind of bonded on the Philadelphia factor, it was real and it felt very aligned and we come from the same place and um so, yeah, I mean, that interview actually went
Mhm.
better. And then I felt, okay, I feel like I can do this. I feel like, because I think I was having a little bit of imposter syndrome the first time. Like, could
Mm,
this possibly be me working for him? Like, why would he choose me?
mm.
All of this kind of going through my head. And then I got a little bit more confidence the second time, the second interview, which was the first time I met him. And um, I was a little bit starstruck and it for the
I
first
was gonna
second.
ask you that.
the
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Like, how do you compose yourself, like being there, with somebody that is, known around the world? Like, I'm like, that's gotta be like, oh, and not only that, it's like also his size, right? And
Yes,
how tall are you?
I'm 5 foot.
But oh, you
Yes,
are little. You're
yeah,
shorter. Yeah, I imagine that, like that grandeur, not only of like the name, but just physically and stuff too. Wow.
yes.
But you were able. Did you feel like you were able to relate to him in that human level rather than the starstruck level?
Yes, so that's what I was going to say. When I met him, I was like, wow, I'm a little bit nervous right now going in to shake his hand. And then because he was so tall, like we were just saying, I'm so short. And I even had little heels on, but he was still so tall. And I got over it. I snapped myself out of it. I just said, you know what, he's a man with a business, and that's what he is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would be
Mm-hmm.
working with him.
Love that.
He's just a man with a business, so just go with that. And
Okay.
um,
Can you just, okay, I want everybody to listen to this because this is something I actually am working on myself right now, Sandra, is not to be intimidated by people's titles or those kind of things,
mhm,
even speaking, even sometimes when I'm interviewing somebody, like, it could be intimidating when,
Yes.
interviewing somebody that maybe has another podcast or has this or that. And in my other business, in my health and wellness business too, depending on who it is I approach, I'm like, oh my gosh, but that person's a CEO of something, like, in these titles that we get so caught up on. And then it ends up stopping us from really fully connecting to the other person in a personal level. And the fact that you were able to really do that, oh, this is just it's a businessman, and I'm just going there in an interview and removing themselves. That's so admirable, by the way. That
Oh,
is,
thank
and
you.
you're yeah, you're young too, so to already kind of be in that place in your life, to already have learned that, that's pretty impressive in my viewpoint.
Thank you. Yeah, immediately snapped myself out of it and said, you know what? That's it. Let's move forward with this. The interview went really smoothly. It was like having a conversation. So I think that's one of the reasons why he picked me is because I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to be so impressed by him. I was going to
Mm-hmm.
treat him as my boss and treat him as any other boss,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to, that I think that's what they were looking for is someone who was not going to be starstruck, someone who was not going to be like, this is Kobe, especially being in California. I was never a Lakers fan. I didn't come from this area. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch his games. I really had nothing to do with what he did in sports. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, he
Mm-hmm.
was just another guy who I knew had played at my rival high school back in Philly. Um, my brother had seen him play. So we went to rival high schools and we talked about that. We talked about sports. I played ice hockey and rugby in high school.
Oh, I cannot even picture you in those rough sports. I cannot
I
even.
still have my hockey equipment in the back of my car. I have my hockey bag with all my stuff, which is it's as big as me.
That's
It's so heavy.
cute.
Um, and he was actually really impressed that I played ice hockey. He was like, "No way." He's like, "I've done those skate machines and they are a killer on your legs. Like I cannot believe you played that." And just really bonding over the major points in life, sports, family, and goals. Like we talked about, he
Mhm,
asked me what I want to do in life, like really what I want to do. And didn't, I really didn't hold back on that. I said I wanted to be a nutrition, and I didn't know. I knew about facial reflexology and gua sha at this point, but I didn't really know I wanted to make a career out of that yet. But I knew nutrition was part of it and health was part of it. So I said,
mhm.
one
So
day
you
maybe.
didn't, yeah, you didn't end up doing the what he wanted to hear. Like, you didn't say, "Oh, I'd like to
Right.
keep on growing my, in a management position for you," or, you or something like that. You didn't say what you want. You said your truth. You spoke your truth.
Right. And I did what I
That
mentioned with him is that I would like to grow alongside and with him and learn
Mhm,
how he owns a business and learn how he runs a business. But I surely didn't um, tell him what he wanted to hear. And I
mhm,
wasn't sure how that was going to go. I just, again, went into this with being as real as possible um, because I knew this was going to be a huge opportunity, but at the same time, it had to be a fit. So,
mhm. Love that. I love that because you were just authentic, and then that authenticity paid off. So then when
yeah.
did you get the call? When did you get the call?
So let's see. I interviewed December 12th. I got the call. He wanted to interview again. So over Christmas time, he asked if I could come in, but I was actually over with my family in Philadelphia. So I said, "Oh, we could do a video interview if you want." And he said, no, he'd rather it be in person. So January, we met again January 2nd. I flew back um, before New Year's. I flew back to California and we met on January 2nd, and I got the call the next day. So
That you had the job. That's
yes, that I got
amazing.
it. And
And when were
that
you
that
going to
third
start?
interview was awesome too. We talked even more about um, just goals and life, and we really connected on a spiritual level. I think that was it. That's where I was like, I want this. I want to work with him. He's
Mm,
so, I don't even know how to say it. He's just this man who has he had such an amazing, larger than life presence, but he was so humble that you could relate to him. It
mm,
was incredible. So I knew I wanted it. And I was on cloud nine when they said I got it. And I said I had to give 2 weeks to my current job. I wanted to leave on a good note. So my last day at my job was January 8th, 2020. And then my boyfriend and I went to Portugal. A little bit of background, my boyfriend works for an airline, and we jump to different countries for 2 or 3 days at a time just because we can. And we've been doing that for like 4 or 5 years now. Um, and so we said, oh, why don't we go celebrate in between jobs? Let's go to Portugal. And so after I left my temp job, we went to Portugal for about 2 days, and the plan was to come back literally the day before I started with Kobe. And I learned landing at LAX from that trip that he had died. And I was supposed to start less than 24
the
hours
next day.
the next day. Yeah.
Yeah. So take us into that because you shared it with me in our pre-interview of how you're there, like basically like in baggage claim, kind of like in the airport or in that area, and you hear the news, and and was it you that went up to somebody and you're like, wait, is that true? Is it true? And that kind of like the way that you were reacting, people were probably like, y- of course, everybody was in shock. This was something that affected the world, not just Lakers fans, right? This was a shock for a big part of the world. For when he died, him and his daughter and the other people, passengers. Um, but for you, it had a whole other layer of it. So so tell us a little bit about that, of the finding out on that day, and then your calls and stuff after that.
Sure. So it actually started on the airplane. I was preparing a post for social media to say, I'm starting with Kobe tomorrow. This is a new adventure, a new chapter for me. I'm so excited. And the girl next to me was coming out to California she was coming out for work, and she had asked me what I do, and I was telling her about Kobe, and we were like, she bought me some wine on the plane. Like, she was like, I'm so excited for you. Like, this is crazy. And, you're going to be working for Kobe. And like, it was, and she had never been to California before. So I was giving her, recommendations on stuff to do and what to see. And I remember landing, and she was like, this isn't the sunny California that I've been told about, because it was so cloudy
Right.
and gloomy,
Mm.
and it just felt like she almost foresaw that something weird was
Yeah.
going on.
It's what in what is it called? It's not foreshadow. I forget if that's called foreshadowing. In you see, I should know this with my theater background. But when in plays or in movies that the environment reflects on what's happening, the mood sets the mood of what's
Yes.
happening in the.
Yes.
So that's what was happening, kind of in LA the day you arrived.
Yes. Like, it was almost this like unspoken spiritual um event that was happening that we didn't know what it
Mm-hmm.
was, but we knew that something was weird. And I was like, oh, yeah, that is weird. The clouds should clear up, but yeah, it's weird. So anyway, I, um, my boyfriend was like, oh, I'm going to go get the car since he works there. He got to park there. So he's like, I'm going to go get the car. You just wait here and I'll come around and get you. I was like, okay, great. So I'm waiting there. And then he calls me like 10 minutes later. He calls me. And I'm like, why is he calling me? And he's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, did you hear the news? And I'm like, no, I'm standing right here. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
Kobe
Mm-hmm.
Bryant just died in a helicopter crash. And I didn't even comprehend those words. I just didn't even know what to say. I didn't say anything. And I was like, what? I was like, let's just talk about this when you come get me. Like, I'll see you in a few minutes. So I hang up the phone, and then this guy, I'm I start getting texts from my friends saying, "Is this true? Is this true? Is this news real?" And I couldn't even
Because
answer
they're
him.
thinking you knew the end,
Yeah,
right? Because they probably thought you already had that information since you were gonna
right,
work for him.
right.
Yeah,
And
ugh, gosh.
um, I was like, I don't even know. I don't even know how to approach this situation. So some guy was dropping off this woman. I think he was an Uber driver, and he's like, "Yeah," I overheard him. He's like, "Yeah, just Kobe Bryant just died." And I ran to him and I was like, "Is this true? Like, are you sure that this is true?" And he's like, "Yeah, I also work for TMZ." He's like, "It's true, honey."
Mm,
And I
mhm,
was like, "Oh
mm,
no. Like, this isn't even like I I
mm,
didn't even know what to think. My legs were shaking severely and I started like panicking a little bit because I mean, I was sad for his death. I didn't understand how that could happen, but also I was so sure that my future was set that
mhm,
um now it wasn't, and now it was this like huge unknown. And so my sister called me when we were in the car and she's just like, "I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, now I don't know what to do." And so I contacted my agency and I just said, "Hey, can you find out whether I should go in tomorrow? Because I don't want to show up if, I'm not needed or this is going to be chaos. I don't want to intrude on something that has nothing to do with me right now. I don't know how I can be of help, but I'm willing to help in any way if they need me to." And so the CMO called me and said to hang back and to not go in, which was understandable. I figured it was going to be a no, and to just wait until they decide if they need me or not. So um, they were going to have all these news crews come in, and there was going to be a lot of chaos at the office. And the office is very small. It was only about 5 or 6 people, and it's all C-levels. So they were going to be the ones dealing with everything because it's a publishing company and production company. Everything is kind of outsourced, so everyone
mm,
comes
mhm,
into the office versus everyone being there. So it's going to be
mhm,
just me as the assistant, Kobe, and the C-levels. And that was it. So I figured they wouldn't need me, um, and they had to kind of deal with everything and figure everything out because I'm sure they were in utter shock
yes,
and
it's
didn't
fine,
even know
absolutely.
how to navigate this. So I waited about a week and a half for them to tell me that they were not going to bring me on.
Mm.
And yeah, that was, I think I cried every day and slept till like noon every day. I was so emotionally exhausted
Mm,
and just wrapping my head around how sad it was. Just losing him and losing and his daughter and just how they died. It was just such a violent
mm,
way to die.
mhm. So it's yeah, because then you're empathetic over what they've been through, the sadness about that, and then also at the same time dealing with your own grief about what your life would have been too had you gone that route of working alongside him. You had already given your 2 weeks notice at your job, so you had already lost that. Um, so you're kind of in this limbo at that moment. Um, yeah, that is a lot. Now, from there, then, how long did it take you then to get the other job that you got um, right around what was it, February or March?
February, yeah.
February. So how long did it take you then for them to find you another job for
So
your agent?
not too long. I wanted to be very picky because I had this opportunity and that I was not going to find something like this. That I told them, I really want something that's going to be big. like this. It's not, I know, I understand, I
Yeah,
understand it.
like, how do you top that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, how do you top that?
Yeah.
It's like, this was your te is this your temp agency still, or this is
Yeah.
your,
It's a staffing agency. Yep.
yeah,
Same one.
yeah,
And yep.
staff yeah.
And
So then it's kinda like they're like, "Man, how do we find her something
yes,
else
I
that
mean,
can"
they were,
gosh,
they were
hard shoes
so,
to fill,
oh,
hard shoes to fill.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I knew that, and I knew it wasn't going to be the same. And they were so sympathetic towards me, and they said, you're one of our biggest and best clients, and we are going to find something amazing for you. Um, I, yeah, I basically made sure that were they knew that I needed something just not out of the ordinary, or not
Mhm.
ordinary. I needed something out of the ordinary,
Because
to
you're not normal, like we just said in Maya Angelou's quote here.
yes, not
You're
to toot my
amazing.
own horn, but just
No,
from
no, no.
the what I had,
Standards,
you
absolutely.
know.
No, it's that's a great thing. It's a great thing to be, just not to settle. I think that's awesome. So many of us just settle in different times in our life, and you don't have to. You don't have to just settle, right?
Right. I
Um,
spent so
so that's a
long saying yes to
mhm,
every opportunity that came along my way, and I was in so many
mhm,
different fields that I was not interested in, and so many unfulfilling spots like finance, and like I'm not interested in that at all. And real estate, like not none of that interests me. So I
mhm,
spent years taking on any opportunity I could to learn more, to get more exposure, to um, just learn and become a better, you know, better at different jobs. And this time, after that, I was like, I'm not going to settle. So, um, and they definitely delivered. So, um, they called me with an opportunity at University of Southern California, and they said it would be supporting um, an executive, but they didn't tell me who. They just said, this position would be supporting an executive. Are you interested? And I said, ooh, a school. Like, that's pretty different. Like, I want to go for that. I want to be surrounded by energy of college students, and like the fun, young energy of a school, which is so different than a corporate environment that I've always been in. So, um, I went in and interviewed, and I interviewed a couple HR people, and they still didn't tell me the position that it was. And they said, "Can you wait a couple hours? The executive would like to interview you." And I said, "Okay, sure." So I waited a couple hours, and then they said, "Okay, the executive is ready for you." And I'm like, "Can you at least just tell me, can you prepare me a little bit for what I'm going into, like who this executive is?" And it ended up being the president of University of Southern California.
mhm,
So the
mm,
highest position possible was available. The highest position of support was available for this person, and
mm.
it ended up being a woman, which I felt like was so in line with what I was looking for too. I just felt, oh great, I can follow and learn from this person, especially as a woman. Um, and her chief of staff was also a woman, and I met with her, so that was really cool. It felt like such a great fit. I felt so good leaving that interview, and I ended up getting the position.
Mhm.
And so I started on February 18th. So Kobe Bryant died on January 26th. I was supposed to start January 27th, and then I started a new job February 18th at
Mhm.
University of Southern California.
And then, so just a complete other, a little bit different, of course, than what you had, but still something that resonated and was in alignment with you. That's so awesome. Now that is pretty impressive. So in general, if I'm hearing you correctly, in your life, you moved to California 4 weeks later. is when you got your job, and it's almost been like that. Like it's less than 4 weeks, even just here,
Yeah.
that then you started. And um, so that period kind of like of that waiting or changed, it doesn't end up happening longer than that in some of these other periods of your life. So now this is a university setting, February, then comes March 2020, and things shift again. So take us as to what happened when when COVID hit and how everything kind of shifted, even just the education system, right? Kids were sent home, online schooling, all that. So what happened in for you in your job?
So we didn't know how big this really was. I mean, I know that it was kind of happening since December, but not on a university level. And we knew that there were some cases in February, but we didn't know how big this really was until we had to send our um, study abroad students home. Like our international students had to be sent home,
Mm-hmm.
and we were like, okay, this might be a little bit bigger than we realized. And parents were calling the president's office to get their money back for room and board from their students. I mean, there was a lot going on, um, and I was kind of part of those meetings with the senior leadership team meetings that I had to prepare documents for, and so they could have these meetings that were all of a sudden all COVID related. And then I slowly started doing a little bit less. And then they said, we're going to start working from home March 13th. We were probably the last corporate building to go home. All the other administration buildings had gone home, all the students had been home. It was just the president's office who had been there until March 13th. And then my chief of staff, who I reported to, she said, bring your laptop home. Um, if this blows over in a month, that's great. But if it doesn't, then we might not be able to keep you on board. So, um, this position was a 2 month temporary trial period, and then they would hire me after 2 months. So it was going along that way that I would have been hired. I mean, the chief of staff was so sad to tell me that, and she didn't want to tell me that. And I remember just sitting in my office crying. I just like shut my door and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I cannot lose this job. Like, I
Mm.
love this job. I really loved it. So I said, okay, I'm just going to do my best, go home, work from home. I tried to create work for myself once I got here back home and started working on stuff. There wasn't much to do because, again, everything was COVID related. So I canceled all her speaking events. All the events were done, canceled. All her travel I had to cancel because I booked travel back in February for her, and I booked, a
Mm.
lot of stuff for her to go to, and I had to cancel all of that, her car services, everything. So that was my life for like a week of just canceling, and then nothing, not like maybe a couple of emails a day. So um, April came around, and they had to lay me off for lack of work and their budget, since I was the newest addition to the president's office. I was the first one to be cut and the only one, I believe, because I was also temporary and not full time with them. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that that was April 17th. That was my last day with USC.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hi. So that's like two major changes just in, no, well, technically three, because then if you think of, okay, you finished one job, you were going to start then another one in, you start in January, and then you started this one then in February, and then you again are without a job just within that 4 month period of 1 year of the first, of this year of 2020. Now, how did you, since this is also the aspect of the tools that we've used during our grief process, what were some of the things that kept you afloat basically within all these changes? What are the things that worked for you um, in that grief process of your job transitions and losing jobs and such?
Well, at this point, I had gua sha. I'm really into holistic medicine and holistic ways.
Share a little bit what it, yeah, share what gouache, because I've been learning. By the way, I did a little quick video the other day, like one of those like fast ones, like doing it, and I was gonna send it to you just so you could see that I started with my neck, like you said. I'm like,
Good, good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, gua sha is pretty much an ancient holistic massage ritual. It dates back to probably like 4,000 years ago, and it heals your body from the inside out. So, um, it moves lymph from your lymphatic system. It moves it, drains toxins through your lymphatic system, which is your body's drainage process. Um, and it also protects your immune system. And because our bodies hold toxins, we can clear these out by moving the muscles directly under the skin. So it just uses a type of stone, like a jade stone or beyond stone. Um, but I've used gua sha since 2013, which was for CrossFit. So I also did
Mm.
CrossFit for about 5 years. Um,
Oh, we have that in common too.
yes, I
I used to
loved
do
it.
CrossFit too.
Loved it. I
Did
had
you did shoulder? Where did you use shoulder injury?
so
Because that would have been helpful for me to know about that when I had my shoulders.
yes, it was neck and back of arms. Oh my gosh, that was the worst spot. Back of the arms, because we did so many pull ups and so much of those butterfly,
Mhm.
pull ups.
Oh yeah, I still do assisted. I still would do with a band. My body was never really my I don't think my body was designed yet to really be able to do a strict pull up yet. So like,
Oh my gosh, yes.
it's like
Uh,
I think we all are distributed
yeah,
differently, right? It's like
yeah.
everybody has different strengths. That's something my
I'm,
body was
hmm
it
yeah,
took I still yet have done yet. I'll just say yet. Let me put it that way. Yet
yeah. There's
to
still
be able to do.
plenty of time, and I definitely struggled with a lot of things I couldn't do. Some things that others could do, and vice versa. So, but all
Mhm.
no matter what, it was hard for everyone. It was like this constant
Mhm.
muscle tightness, because we're just working our muscles so hard. So we had a member of the CrossFit gym who um, I believe she got certified in gua sha and came to the
Mm.
gym Saturdays and would just do free gua sha on those who wanted to. And I was always like, me, because I'm so tight. And it was really for mobility purposes. I never
Mhm.
um, really knew about how it drained toxins out or how it helps with mood and improves all this other stuff. Like, um,
I'm assuming it also then it's kind of like the fascia, am I saying it
mhm,
right? Fascia,
mhm,
fascia?
yeah, yeah.
The fascia muscles, right. So that layer then it also helps with that too, right?
Right, right. That was like the
Yeah,
purpose of it. It was like loosening
right. Mhm.
the fascia in our
Mhm.
underneath the surface so that we could be more mobile and less sore
Mhm.
because we were
Mhm.
competing. I mean, I was doing competitions. That gym went to Mid Atlantic regionals. I mean, it was a tough gym that I was part of, and I really pushed
Mhm.
myself a lot. That I was always so tight. So it was really just for
Yeah. So that's
mobility
when you
purposes.
discovered it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
back then you discovered it for mobility, and then I mean, then afterwards, of course, with your research and growth, then you've kind of shifted. And so during this time, then that was something that you used. Now, what areas would you use the gua sha on so that it could help you for the tension and the stress and so forth of your grief during this time? What parts of your body were the ones that you
So
were holding the most?
neck, face, and the
Hmm.
chest area, the lungs, kind of
Hmm.
that area. Um,
So is that emotion? Is that also like does if you were think of like is it at all related? Can it be even related with like chakras or things like that with people with the energies component too in our bodies?
Yes, totally. And also earth
Mm,
elements. So we all have certain earth elements within us. There's actually wood, metal, water, fire, and earth. We have all those elements within
mhm,
us, and different lines on our faces and different markings on our faces, the way our faces are even shaped, our noses, our cheekbones, all of that is related to elements that we have within our body. So it goes
mm,
along with chakras, it goes along with elements, um, with our organs. It's all connected. So
mm,
we don't just have lines on our faces and spots and skin tags and all of that for no reason. Like, our body processes things from the inside out. So if something is going
mhm,
on within us, it's going to come outward. And
mm,
so I've learned about different emotions that our organs hold, and our nervous system holds our emotions. Emotions are not either not created nor destroyed. They're just moved. So you either keep them
mhm.
inside or you move them out, but they're never like E and
It's
motion.
energy. Back
Yeah,
again to energy. Energy
yeah, it's
cannot be
energy.
created nor
Right.
it's energy. So it's all
So,
energy. So you just
right.
have to figure out how to be able to move it through so that it's not stuck in places in which it could create damage and harm and illness.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
really, within the type of grief that I was going through, just loss of job, loss of, I felt like almost loss of who I am. Like, what am I supposed to be
Identity.
doing?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I really took to that every day, and just felt like it helped me, to a point. That was one of my healing modalities at that point. But I didn't really do reflexology as much yet until maybe like June, July.
Yeah. And we're gonna go into that part because then which is interesting too, because then something that helped you with your grief process then ends up being now what you're focusing on now. And as you said, you weren't going to settle for just any job after you lost the opportunity to work with Kobe based on what happened. And then you had USC, and then that, then COVID happened, and then you lost. So I'm assuming that mentality of, again, one, right now it's also harder, right, to find a, a
Hmm.
certain type of job. And back in California, too, a lot of things are also back to being shut down at this particular point in time, too. So you then refocus to then studying more of this art, this art, science, technique. Is it everything? Would it be reflexology and art as well as a science?
Yeah, it's kind of all tied into one, I
Gonna
would
be?
say.
It's all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an artistic side of everything.
Yeah.
So, so June, July. We're going to talk now about. Let's talk about June. Um, so in that period of time of waiting and during COVID, your family then was in Philadelphia. You're in California. And this is where I was telling you, the listeners, that things were kind of going to shift and that a lot of different things happened during these first 4 months of 2020 in Saundra's life. And then something else shifted again. So your family is in Philadelphia, you in LA, you get a call
Oh, but
around
before that, I got
backtrack.
hacked, and then I found
Oh,
a new job
yes.
opportunity as well that I started doing as
Oh, okay,
well.
okay. So you did okay, so do you wanna talk about that part?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, June, I kind of started
You see, I'm
looking.
telling you, this was a lot. You see, even for me to keep track of all the stuff that happened, I'm like, "Wait, wait." I'm like, and I wrote if I look through my notes, it will sound like the rattling of if I look through my notes. So I'm just going by my mental remembrance of our first conversation. So I'm sorry if I forgot this part
No
of your
worries,
story. Go
no
ahead, go ahead.
worries. So, actually, we'll go to May. So it's like every
Okay, so
month
maybe.
there is something that happens. Um,
Ay, ay, ay.
May, I stumbled upon a health and wellness product that really resonated with me on a soul level, and I started to research that. And it is a in-home water ionizer that creates 7 different pH levels of water. I didn't really know about water before. I just assumed that the water bottles we have in the stores are 9.5, and that's what they say they are. But there's so much more to water that we're missing and that is not being talked about, that I saw this opportunity as like just really something to jump on, because I feel like water is going to be talked about in the health space in the coming
Mm-hmm.
years, and not many people are, but there's this one specific community that of entrepreneurs that have this water ionizer and also do direct sales with it. So I signed up for the marketing classes and signed up for the informational videos, and this just to see if this was something I wanted to commit to. And I had a friend who from Pennsylvania, actually. I used to go to her massage studio. So this all kind of ties together, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
She has
Mm.
a massage massage studio, and I used to get, also while doing CrossFit, I used to get massages weekly from her, Thai massages, where she would like basically walk on my back and use her feet to massage my body. Um, so I always loved the idea of holistic ways of healing and using gua sha and massage, that I felt like, okay, she's doing this opportunity, this water business. I want to talk to her more about this. And so I did this health and sustainability 5-day challenge, and it went over law of attraction and abundance versus scarcity mindset, and it went over um, money mindset. It talked about health in the aspect of water, which I had no idea that, we're not really paying attention to our water, and it is something that we need to
And
start paying attention to.
what percentage are we of water? What human beings? That's like a huge percentage of our body is water.
Yes, around 70%, I believe.
Yeah. So,
Yes. So,
and then the rest is proteins, probably. So yeah,
yeah,
so water
exactly.
and protein.
You know. Um, yeah, I just felt like, whoa, why are we not talking about this? And why are people not talking about this? This is such a sleepy category in health. So I was like, I'm going to pursue this. So I did lots of mindset work. I went into a 21-day manifestation challenge that this community offered, and I got the water machine, and I signed up with I hooked up with an accountability partner. We kept each other accountable. We talked about what we would post on our social media, and we did all, I felt like things were starting to connect for me, and it was um, starting to reveal itself what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And
Mm-hmm.
then, um, so I would say May through June was like full speed working on my mindset, watching these videos, learning about this water, trying to organically market on my phone, on my Instagram, and also do um, paid advertisements as well, which is a really great thing that this community offers. Um, so I really started diving into this, my purpose. I really felt like this is my purpose, and I feel like it still is, but it kind of got interrupted when I got hacked in very early July. Um, there was a T-Mobile data breach, and basically this guy pretending to be T-Mobile called me, was impersonating a T-Mobile rep, um, and he had confirmed all my info. He basically said, "Is this Saundra Heimark? Am I speaking with Saundra?" I basically confirmed the information for him. So I'd say, "Yes, this is Saundra. Yes, that's my address. That's my yes, yes."
Mm-hmm.
And um, he basically said, "I noticed that you purchased an iPad. Is that true? Is that correct? Did you make this purchase?" And I said, "No, I didn't." But my boyfriend and I were at the T-Mobile store just a couple days earlier getting new phones. We got we upgraded our iPhones. So it was kind of relevant that a T-Mobile rep would call and
Mhm.
just make sure we did not purchase anything else out of that visit. So I was like, that's weird. No, we did not purchase that. And so he said, okay, I'm going to going to go ahead and do a cancellation. Here's the case number. He told me his name. He gave me the case number, the cancellation number. And then about 4 hours later, I noticed I did not have service on my cell phone. And I was out at the store, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe a tower nearby is down, like no big deal. And then a couple hours go by, and I said, okay, this is not normal that I still don't have service. And I got back into my apartment from being out, and the only reason I got a text or could text was because I had my Wi-Fi on. So I texted my boyfriend who was at the gym, and I said, "Hey, can you please call T-Mobile to see why I don't have service? Like, this is very strange. I don't know if you're experiencing the same thing." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll call." And he was like, "Yeah, I have service." And I was like, "Okay, that's weird because we're
Mm.
literally like in the same area." So um, he called them and he said, "It looks like my number is not a part of their, like, it's not a part of the account anymore. It's not a part of my account." And I said, what does that even mean? My phone number is not part of my account anymore. And he's like, "I think that person who called stole your phone number." And I
Oh,
was like, what in the world? So he's like, check your bank accounts right now. Like, he's like, check everything. So he, this guy had taken out thousands of dollars from my savings. He spent
oh.
thousands of dollars at Target, different Targets. Um,
And all with just having stolen your phone?
yeah, because
Your
I think
phone number?
I bet he had my social security because that's on the T-Mobile account, and my address
Wow.
and my email, all of it. So
Wow.
um I was like, shoot, like cursing, like, oh my God, like calling, this was at like 5 in the afternoon on, I don't know, like a Thursday. And I was calling my banks, like, this is not approved. Please do not put that through. Someone has my information. And then, yeah, so I had to go in and change my email address for everything, all my accounts. I had to change my oh, and meanwhile, T-Mobile was working on a temporary phone number for me. So um, they assigned me a phone number, and then I had to text my family and say, "Do not text my old number because this is not me. This is someone who stole my number." And it just sounded so strange, right? Like a weird message coming out of nowhere, like, "Don't text that number." Um, is so bizarre. I think I stayed up all night that night, um, like pretty much trying to change everything so this person wouldn't get into my any other accounts.
Gosh.
Um,
That is just so crazy,
so
so
crazy.
crazy.
The
So then
worst
it's
part
like,
of
here it
it,
is. This is literal loss of identity. So
yes,
before it was like, loss of identity because of your job and stuff. But here it's like all of a sudden you actually lost your, identity theft here with using your stuff to steal your money. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
crazy. The worst
So
part was that
wow.
he had gone into my Instagram as well and changed my password. So I couldn't get into
Mm,
my Instagram. They wouldn't let me in. I had to email them and say, "This is me." I had to write a code and put a picture of myself to Instagram saying, "This is me. Can you please get my account back?" Because it kept saying error, like error. And then my boyfriend was like, "Yeah, when I search you, you don't show up. Like, you're not showing up." And I said, "Well, I exist still somehow." So I asked them to get my account back, and they didn't respond. So I said, "You know what? I'll give them the weekend. I'm not going to worry about this now." Even though I was pretty upset because I had started creating my social media to have an online business, to have this direct sales
mhm,
business, to promote this product, to um, talk about my opportunities, all of that was gone. I'd had that
mm.
Instagram since 2013. and
Yeah.
everything that I had,
Having to start again.
everything was
Yeah.
gone. So
Ay. Yeah, that is just so much. What a good learning opportunity for all of us to listening, because so many times we get these um, calls or emails. I get all the time, like even from my universities I've studied or things like that, and they're like pretending that to be from that, or and I don't know. It's just that there are constantly ways of people trying to hack you. Um, so thank you for sharing that, because that's something that can a lot of people can relate to, those telemarketing calls and things like that,
you
and that
know,
you think that they're real.
you know what? I was waiting for a call from my bank, my credit card bank, actually, because they were going to basically they were going to call me so I could approve the amount of money going out of my account to purchase the water ionizer. They said
Mm,
they needed to call me for that permission. And so I was like, "Oh, it must be my bank." And then when I answered, I was like, "Oh, it's T-Mobile. Okay, whatever." So I wouldn't normally answer those calls. That's just an
mm-hmm.
833 number or whatever it was. But I was waiting for a call and I figured it was my bank. And that was so far from the truth. So
Oh my
it
gosh,
was
yeah.
like ridiculous. I could not believe that happened. Um, so yeah, that was a loss of identity, truly a loss, a real setback in my business that I had started. Um, I had to change all my bank info. I couldn't get my water ionizer yet. So I felt at a standstill, at a very stopping, a very large stopping point in my life. Like, okay, I've got to wait to hear from Instagram to continue my business. I've got to fix all this other stuff that, you know, so
Okay, now Sandra, now that's just a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot that you just went through and that you shared with us. And so now tell us then what happened. So this is early July that then you got hacked. You then go. Is this when you went and then visited your parents, or what happened then? Take us into what happened during this period of time.
so 4th of July weekend goes by, and then I received a call from my dad on July 7th. It was that Tuesday. Um, and that day, my mom had um, a virtual radiologist appointment. Some background: my mom had battled ovarian cancer for 3.5 years. She was diagnosed in February of 2017. Um, so my dad had called, and basically it was like those calls that you just don't want to receive, and it's like in a movie. It's a call out of a movie where he was like, your mom has only a couple weeks to live. And I had texted my mom and dad earlier that day saying, um, I hope your radiologist appointment goes well. And, I had been video chatting with my mom weekly, same with my sister, my older sister, and my older brother as well. But we video chatted through quarantine because, I didn't want a chance going to visit her having
Mhm.
cancer, weak immune system, all of that. I I didn't visit her. Um, so this was kind of shocking, I guess, because I hadn't visited her. I hadn't really seen her since February. The last time I saw her in person was February between Kobe Bryant and USC. I did go back and visit my
Mm.
parents for about 4 days in between those jobs. Um, and she seemed okay then. She seemed pretty fine. Um, but yeah, I guess through quarantine, she had been going slowly downhill, probably since, I would say, since December. Very slowly, though, not noticeable, where it was basically like, oh, this could be the chemo that's making you feel
Mm.
really
Mhm.
tired, making you feel really sick, making you feel kind of out of balance. Like, we all just thought it was the chemo, throughout quarantine, because she had chemo pills because she didn't go to the doctor as often through COVID. Um, and we just said, okay, maybe it's like, I just always wanted to be optimistic. Like, this is just the chemo. Um,
Mhm.
maybe you need another chemo. Maybe you need to get off chemo. Who knows? So I kind of, it was a shock when my dad called, and I said, what? Like, how long has this been going on for? Like, I just didn't even realize that. And he said, really, since Friday. And so it was since, like, basically around the time I got hacked that he noticed my mom had gone cross eyed in one eye. She was having a lot of trouble
Mm.
walking. She had fallen a couple times that weekend. And I was like beside myself, like just curled into a ball, just crying, like, how could this happen? How could this be true? So, um, my sister and I got on a plane the very next day, July 8th, and we flew out to Philadelphia. We didn't even have time to get COVID tests. There was just no time. We just got on a plane and went there. Um, we had been quarantining anyway, so we knew we were safe. And we got there. My mom had a walker, and she was cross-eyed in one eye, so she had a little, she was so cute. She had like a pirate eye patch over her one eye. Because the cancer had gone all over her body and pretty much to her brain behind her eye. So it kind of
Mm.
messed with the fluid in her eye, and so it caused her to be cross-eyed. Um, and so that was shocking. I had said hi to my parents when I got there, and I went to the other room and started crying. And my sister was like, "You cannot cry in front of her. You need to do not show this in front of her. She's on her
Mm.
last days, and she just wants to see us happy, and she wants to see us joyful, and she wants to remember us that way. So, like, just absolutely do it on your own time, or cry to me, cry to, dad, whatever, but this can't happen." And I was like, okay, like, how am I going to do this? I really had never lost anyone in my life, and had never experienced illness or sickness like this. My grandparents, yes, they were sick, but I was about 12 when they died. And so that was huge for my dad, my dad's parents. Um, but for me as a 12-year-old, I didn't really understand the grief. Like, it wasn't that close to me. So this was really the first time seeing something and really witnessing, like, this is a serious illness taking a person I love. Um,
Mm.
so I was like, wow, how am I going to do this? Like, I didn't even know how I was going to go through these days. But I was like, okay, not going to shed a tear in front of her. So, you know, um, basically, my mom wanted to be at home. And so we had a hospice nurse come in and meet with all of us. And we took notes on what we could expect, and, you know, just learning from her what the routine was going to be. The nurse would only come like a couple times a week, and then we kind of handled it the rest of the time. They gave us morphine, and they gave us a couple painkillers for my mom, and um, they gave suggestions, like if she was, having trouble eating or having trouble breathing or having trouble doing certain things, we could, help her in certain ways. So I learned a lot in that meeting with the
Mhm.
nurse. And my mom was there too, laying on the couch, and just had been, the nurse said, do you have any questions for me? And my mom was like, no, just kind of sitting there. She was very coherent. My mom was very there,
Mhm.
even though she, like, couldn't really see, she couldn't really walk, but she was very sharp. um, she still wanted to, eat dinner with us at the table and all of that. So um, we
How
really,
did the hospice nurse was the hospice nurse, somebody that would come every day for a certain amount of hours then during that time? Or
not
was
every
it just
day,
for you guys to kind of educate you guys of what to do or
just pretty much to educate us of what to
Mhm.
do. um, we had a health aide come in. She came in every day, but we didn't really need her every day because as my mom got bedbound a little bit more, we did need her. But in the beginning, my dad was bathing her. My dad was like, this is for better or for worse, this is for
Mm,
worse right now. So I'm here for her. I'm not abandoning her. I'm going to help her get changed for bed, brush her teeth, all of that, go to the bathroom, all of it. My dad was there
mhm,
for her. They'd been married 44 years at this point.
mhm,
I've pretty much had a very good family and childhood and everything, that this was for sure the worst thing that's ever happened in my family's
mhm,
life, in my immediate family's life. So, um, we have such a good family that this was like, oh my God, the matriarch of our family is like leaving. This is the worst possible scenario. But throughout those days, we said, you know what, this is not the worst case scenario, because look at all this time we have with her. And
mhm,
we really reminded each other when we felt down, like it could be worse. This could be a child versus the natural order of life being my mom is
mhm,
69. So that's the natural order of life, is just when you become older, you pass on. So it would be worse if it was my niece, or a child in the family. And I don't
mhm,
want to say it's not bad, but this is to be expected, I guess. This is kind of just the natural order of life. So we said, you know what, things could always be worse. She could have died suddenly, like, and the fact that I didn't even have social media during this time,
I was just gonna say, yeah, you didn't have that distraction
none
too.
of
You
that.
could really focus. Yeah.
I was the
Do
most
you,
present I've ever been in my entire life. Like, really
what a
was
gift.
there.
What a gift. Yeah. To be able to really truly be present in those in that time that you got to spend with your mom and really value those moments and cherish those moments. And what you were saying too in the comparison of the different things, that's sometimes one of the methods, I guess, of mourning or dealing with our grief too, is in that aspect of gratitude and putting things into perspective, that also kind of help us be able to move through our grief. Now back to what you were even talking about before, I'm going to make this comparison to what you were talking about before regarding the the energy and the things that happen in our body, and you can only move through, the only way of doing it is moving through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even here with grief, um, you just kind of have to move it through you, through it somehow. So, right? It's like
Yeah.
you have, yeah, you just can't let it just settle. So what are some of those things? So now what, oh, so here it is. How you went there then the weekend after July 4th, and then um you had about how many weeks that you had with your mom?
So we lived it day by day. My dad wanted to assume that it was, a couple months from now that she would be
Mm,
living. Like, I think he wanted to hold on to that because the radiologist did say 2 weeks to 2 months, but that was very
mhm,
gracious of her to give us even 2 months. I mean, I knew it
mm,
was going to be quick. Um, we only had 10 days after of being there. She,
mm.
we got there. My sister got there. Uh, my sister and I got there July 8th, and she died on July 18th. So we had
And your
10
brother
full
lives
days.
in that area?
Yes. So my
Your
brother
brother
and
lives in
sister
that
in
area?
law came over every day, brought my nieces over, and my nieces jumped in to help. They made her drawings. They wore the shirts that she had given them for, birthdays or Christmas or whatever it is, or just because. And my mom would notice and just be like, "Oh, look, you have the dress on, or you have this shirt on," or
Mm,
just thoughtful things like that that my nieces would do. I mean, they were so involved in it and so not afraid of it. And they laid in bed with her. I mean, we all had our chance to lay in bed with her and just be there while she
oh, beautiful.
slept. And because when we got there, she had a walker, and then a couple days later she had a wheelchair. Hospice was so amazing. They um, brought every equipment that we needed. within like an hour of our request,
I know.
So,
It's amazing. I mean, I interviewed the lady that was my mom's hospice nurse, and it's amazing the service that there is, right, in the how amazing hospice is. It's just like for somebody that maybe reluctant to reach out to somebody like in hospice or palliative care because of the title that it means and that
mhm,
fear of
mhm,
having else. Honestly, and like from here, two daughters of moms who passed away and we had those services, we can totally vouch that it's probably the best help you can have
gosh.
during that time.
Absolutely. We were so thankful and so impressed. We didn't know how we would do it otherwise. And my dad, like you said, the whole like name and the whole
Mhm.
aspect of it
It's
being called
scary. Yeah,
hospice,
it's
and
scary.
like
Yeah.
he didn't
It
want
makes it
the
real.
it does. It makes it
Yeah.
real. There was no
Mhm.
turning back. And the fact that the truck would stop in our driveway and it would say hospice and commodes and toiletry,
Mhm.
toilet stuff and diapers and all of that. Like my dad was like, "Oh no, like the neighbors are gonna see this and all." I'm like, "Stop worrying about that. We cannot worry about that right now." Like I understand that it's just this like doom and gloom, like hospice. It really is. And he didn't, I understand why he didn't want the neighbors seen, and he didn't, because it sparks questions like, oh no, but we were so so incredibly thankful, like that we had them. We thanked them so much. And we had a 24/7 hotline we could call if we had questions or wanted to request anything. They were so incredible. Like we could not have done that without their help and in getting things so quickly. And the commode for the toilet and her diapers and her eating like a little wheelie thing that she could eat in bed. Like those were so helpful. So I mean, it was.
Yeah, because it brings it a little bit easier than for the family who's taking care.
Yeah.
So either you have the hospice, provide with these things, or you have somebody, a hospice nurse, be there to help you. Like if you can't carry the person that is ill, you can have somebody else be there to help you with those things, the bathing and all those
Mhm.
things if you physically can't do it.
Right. And my dad did that up
The
until the point pretty much that she was bedridden. My dad wanted to
Mhm,
be there for her till the very end, like until she
mhm,
died. And he was just putting her in the wheelchair, taking her to the bathroom every night. She had fallen. He would get her up, like change her into her pajamas. My mom was so stubborn, she still put her contacts into her eyes. My
oh
dad would
my
help her
goodness
with
gracious.
that. Like this was it was so ridiculous. Like I helped her at one point too, but I was like, "Mom," but my dad was like, "This is her world now. She's going to do what she wants to do." And she's still that stubborn Latina woman. So, um
Uh,
it was just, I was like, "Mom, you're cross-eyed. How are you doing this?" And she had hard contacts, so she'd have to like stick a little suction on her eye and to take the little
wow.
contact out. So this was just, we wanted to be as helpful as we could. And my dad basically called us at the point that he was like, "I can't do this by myself anymore." Like that's when he called my sister
Mhm,
and me and was like, "I can't do this alone." He's like, "I've done it to this point,
that's so.
but yeah."
Was your brother more aware than what was happening, or because of COVID, then he also had not visited as frequently?
What's funny is we talked about that, and because the last time my brother and sister-in-law had seen my parents was on Father's Day, so that was about mid-June. So they saw them probably monthly, but they would make sure like they were safe and
Mhm,
before seeing them. But my sister and or my brother and sister-in-law had my parents over for Father's Day in June, and he recalls that she was having a lot of trouble balancing and that she kind of had to sit down to go down the little steps on their porch, like on their outside
mhm,
patio porch. Um, and we just thought it was the chemo. Like at that point, like my brother was like,
mhm,
"Oh, it must be the chemo. Maybe like just because she's having different chemos, it's reacting." strangely in her body, because at that point she was going off of the pills and going back to the doctor, back to the hospital to get physical chemo. Um,
Mhm.
so we were like, oh, it must be the change from the pills to that the liquid chemo. And um, yeah, he was like, she was having some trouble balancing, and she just looked very tired, and she felt very tired, but didn't really have any thought of it other than it must be the chemo, because she's
Mhm.
gone through many different chemos in the 3.5 years. She had surgery on her brain, she had surgery on her spine, she had radiation in her brain. I mean, she was tired like that through certain points during the 3.5 years.
Mhm.
And other times she
Yeah,
was full of energy. So it felt like, oh, another pattern. It was just part of the
right.
pattern.
Yeah, and it's hard to see with chemo sometimes what, like you said, what is the illness and which of those things that they're feeling is an effect of the a side effect of the chemo itself.
Right. None of
So
us
it's hard to
knew.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we knew that she had her appointment on July 7th. My dad had mentioned, okay, she
Hmm.
has a virtual appointment. We'll find out what's going on in her scans. And that was where they were like, we cannot do anything for you.
Hmm.
Can't do
That's when
anything
they
more
know.
for you. And so it'd been, yeah, I think June they kind of noticed something was weird. And now that we can look in retrospect, we
Hmm.
wish we would have known, but there was it was such a short time from June to July that there was nothing that
Right.
probably could have been done anyway.
Hmm. And then the blessing too that you were able to just go and just pick up and go because you didn't have let's say a 9 to 5 type of job at that moment, and so you
Right,
could just go and be there
right.
for that time. And then after she passed, and be there with your dad.
Hmm.
It's like those again, even though. And by the way, I want to thank you. And I know that when we spoke before, I was like, are you ready to talk about this part? Because I knew that the other parts with your jobs and all that change, that was something that you could probably share, but I wasn't sure if time wise, being that it's so recent, had been so recent of your mom's passing, because we had tried to schedule this interview even earlier,
Hmm.
whether that would be the right timing since you were still in that the newness of it. Um but again, because you had that time to really be present with her, and you also had, because you didn't have the job, and you've also then had that time even now to really even sit with your grief and your emotions and so forth.
Right.
So take us a little bit into what helped, and can you also share? I remember you said that this little anecdote, and I'm sure you probably want to share something that you guys would sitting watching your one of your niece's favorite, that they were watching Frozen, and she
Yeah,
made and your mom made a comment. Can you share the comment that your mom made while watching Frozen, and then I want you to take us into what's helped your grieving process.
sure. So the day after my sister and I got there, um, it was my mom, me, and my three nieces, who are my brother and sister-in-law's kids. I, I don't know. I think my sister was with my dad and my brother chatting probably upstairs, but my mom was like, "Oh, do you guys want to watch a movie?" She had a lot of energy that first day that we were there. Um, that first full day we were there, I think she was like, "Wow, like you guys are
Excited,
here."
she was
Yeah,
happy. Yeah,
even though she didn't want my dad to tell us for another 2 weeks, and my dad was like, "I'm not telling them when you're dead." Like that's not how
yeah.
this is gonna go. So my dad made that decision to call us. My mom didn't even want to bother us or want us
Mhm.
to know. But she actually was very thankful, I think, that we were there in the end. Like
Mhm.
truly being like, thank you for accompanying me during this time. We would still
Mhm.
sit down and have family dinners. We still do have family dinners. I mean, we kept it as normal as our family would, like the normal things that we always do. And one of those things was watching movies too. So, especially with my nieces. And my mom was like, pick whatever movie you want. So my nieces were like, oh, how about Frozen 2? So we started watching Frozen 2, and I was just we kind of were all just laying on the couch together. I was just laying my head on my mom's shoulder, and her head was on my head. So it was just kind of leaning into each other. And then my nieces, we were all kind of gathered up as well. And my mom, when we finished the movie, I had never seen it. I think my nieces had seen it. And I don't know, I don't think my mom had seen it. And my mom was like, wow, that movie's about death and legacy. It really is a beautiful portrayal of it. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even really realize that that's what Frozen 2 is about, but it is. It's about death and the legacy that your parents leave behind or your mom or dad leaves behind. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very fitting and just so like, wow, it just tied it all together. And she just felt she was just at peace with it too, just like wow, like that's death, and just her comment was so raw that it was like wow, death is okay, it's okay. It
Because you were hearing it from her, so therefore you could know a little bit of what she thought about death by her comment, and how she felt about, right? How she felt
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
aspect of life. Now, what would you say is your mom's legacy? What do you think is the biggest thing she left for you all?
um to just go after what you want. And she had her own business in interior design. She actually designed pretty much our house, the house I grew up in, that the house that I was pretty much born in. It's still my parents' house, and she redid the kitchen, master suite. Like the bed she died in was her legacy. I mean, it's like she creates spaces, and she did that because she went after what she wanted, and she did that late in life. I mean, really, in couple only like 20 years ago, she went back to school to be an interior designer. So her taking that chance with she had 3 kids at that time and was doing going through school to be an interior designer and knew she could do it. She just went after what she wanted. And she also left behind such amazing an amazing gift of um, I guess food. She has cooked all her life, all my life. She'd always cooked. She was cooking up until the day she couldn't cook. Um, and she left behind a bunch of recipes from her and from her mom. So
Mm,
we come from Mexican, Lebanese, and just Spanish all around. So there's a lot of great Mediterranean and Mexican and Spain, all of that, all of those cultures mixed in with her recipes. And she published the cookbook for me, my sister, and my brother. Um,
oh,
so we have all her recipes and we have a part of her. And there's a whole page in the front of the cookbook that she just says, my kids have always, um, I've always loved to cook, and my kids have inspired me to cook, especially because there were a lot of allergies in our family. So, like my brother in law, he's allergic to soy and dairy. And at one point, my sister in law couldn't have eggs or
so
um,
she'd have to improvise.
gluten.
So she'd have to
Yeah.
kind of shift
So, yeah.
things. Yeah.
So for every
Mm.
holiday, like, what do I make? What do I make? What can satisfy everyone? And then my other niece is allergic to peanuts.
Water and
So
cardboard
I
paper.
know.
Yeah,
Water with a side of
ice
ice.
cubes and water. Yeah.
Like she always
Oh,
asks me like what should I make? Oh my gosh, what should I make this Christmas? Like everyone's coming and like I don't know. And so she, for years, I mean this has been for 15 years now that my nieces had different allergies. My one niece is allergic to peanuts. I just said
mm.
that my other niece is allergic to sesame, and there's like so much
So
that
really, yeah, lots. So
and my
she.
mom pulled it off perfectly every time, and
Mm,
it's like in no time, like no effort at all. And
mhm.
so I just feel like we got that taste for food. She never really we have her recipes, but she never really measured, and it's kind of that do it to taste. She always told me that, do it to taste.
Yeah, yeah, al gusto, al gusto. I told you that the
Yeah.
other day that I
Yeah.
posted something and you said, oh, and I said, Well, I didn't really measure, and I said, and you said, yeah, that's kind of how I cook, and then we're saying how our moms cook that way, and that I said, yeah, and al ojo, al ojo, that's how we say, se hace al ojo. You do it al ojo, like whatever. Yeah, you kind of measure, like your eye kind of knows what is supposed to be. So,
Yeah.
so with that, like the aspect of it looked like it seems that your mom was somebody that would roll with the punches, was good with improvising in life with that aspect of the cookbook too, right? Like kind of
Yeah.
like molding to situations very easily. Um, like you said, without skipping a beat, she's like, okay, well, I'll just have to make something that is soy, gluten, dairy, peanut, sesame, and nothing free. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Free of all
oh my
these things
gosh.
and gluten free.
Yeah, and, like
So and just go with it, yeah, in
yeah,
life. And but that also shows in life then probably also how she was, not just so the sometimes our how we do things, let's say in the kitchen and cooking could be a mirror to what we might be in our life, how we may
wow.
be in our life. Do you think that that resembled a little bit of her?
I think so, Kendra, I've never thought of that, and you're so right, because she did just roll with the punches. I mean, it just thinking back to when she was, like, even diagnosed, I mean, my dad was crying after that, and I remember my sister telling me this story because my dad had told my sister, I guess. And my sister said, mom like hit my dad and said, we are not going to do that. We are going to enjoy our lives, and we are not going to cry, and we're not going to be sad, because this is my battle to fight. This is what I was given, and we're going to just go with it. And it's crazy to even think that she had cancer because she was so healthy. She was the first person that I ever knew about what I'm eating affects like basically skin issues come from my gut. Like my mom was the first
You got,
one
yeah,
to
yeah.
make me realize that. My mom was the first
Mhm.
one
She was
to
your first
have,
educator into the health and wellness.
yes,
She
into
gave
health
you
and
the
wellness.
taste of what health and wellness and what it is you are right now so passionate about and
Yes,
studying.
like
She was your first
always
educator.
used
That's my mom too.
yeah, always used unscented um laundry
Mhm.
detergent. Like she always, and I just was always like, whoa, like picking up these things throughout my life. Like she always used olive oil, like never any other oil. Like it was just,
Mhm.
I mean, she has recipes and stuff that have other oils in it because that's the
Mhm.
way her mom made it and all of that stuff. But we grew up
Mhm.
learning really good cooking and learning the basics of ingredients and what goes into like how
Mm.
just the health aspect of it. It just, to me, I've gathered so much from her, just living her life, and then for her to get cancer was like so strange that this could happen. But at the same time, it's like, okay, she's still rolling with it because this was what
Mhm.
God gave. This is what God had given. Like, not that God gave this to her. I'm not saying that, but this
Mhm.
is the hand she
Mhm.
was dealt, and this is what was supposed to happen for perhaps, me finding my purpose, or perhaps
Mhm.
for my dad to, you know, now start doing the things he really wants to do because he was taking care of my mom for 3.5 years, took her to every appointment. There was one point in time that he had to take her downtown for every single day for radiation for 20 days. I mean, they did not have a break from this. So maybe this is now my dad's time to start, not having to worry about my mom, and he'd been there 3.5 years for her every single day, every single minute, and maybe for me to find my purpose. And there's so much that she leaves behind because she had this, and I wish it wasn't so, but maybe this
Mhm.
had to happen because of that.
It is. It is. It's interesting, yes, because it is not like we, again, and going back to the title even of this podcast, again, when we talk about the gratitude component in this aspect of grief, we are not saying that, oh, I'm so glad this happened to me. It's not that kind of thing. Oh, I'm so glad I lost my job, or I'm so glad it's not that aspect of it, but
Yeah.
it's the seeing that. there is some wisdom that comes from that and the growth that comes from that. And again, like you're seeing all these pieces that kind of come together that you're like, all these things would have not happened had this not taken place. Just even the fact that you went through so much at the beginning of the year prepared you to even be able to navigate the grief of your mom's death as well, because you went through so much of your job, uh, changes and and so forth, and identity and all that, and then all of a sudden this major shift. And one of the words that comes to mind in my eye that best describes you is resilience. And I can see that you're just somebody that's so resilient. um and I think, in general, I think that's a quality that a lot of us human beings have. We just don't end up seeing it sometimes because we don't end up being tested sometimes so much. But this year has been one of those that has for sure tested you, and you've just shown that that quality in you is there. And I've heard something about having a rubber butt is an example I've heard about having like resilience. Something happens, you fall, you have a rubber butt, you get back up.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's again like probably how your mom was in terms of rolling with the punches. Is like,
Yeah.
she was resilient herself,
Hmm.
and that is something also that you're showing as well with all this, and the character development in you because of what you've gone through. At least this is my perspective of the things that I could already see just by your story of what has happened in growth in you. And what other things would you say that you've are grateful for in your change and your shift? And then what tips would you have for the listeners? And then we'll wrap it up because
Yeah.
we hope people I know people are still listening, but I'm like after uh,
I know it's been such a
but this is
long
one
one.
that they needed to say. But it's so necessary because that is really what it is. It's like all these pieces of your puzzle are necessary for what you were going through. So we had to share the whole journey. So thank you for taking the time to share.
Thank you. I'm sorry. And what did you ask? You wanted to
I know
what?
after I just went through all that. That's me. That's me. I just go with the so what I was asking is what are the things that you feel that you are grateful for in this process of growth? You kind of mentioned a little bit that you said of where you are right now. Um, but also then maybe even just the things that have helped you in your grief in terms of, you know, moving your grief.
Sure. I am grateful for my mindset and the fact that I got to learn about law of attraction and having a positive mindset and having an abundance, an abundant mindset has really helped me through this time. And to just be positive, and that I've always known that things happen for a reason. I always know that. And I know that might sound insulting to some people who go through grief, but to me, it's the truth. It's my truth. It may not be everyone's truth, but people don't like to hear the truth, and things do happen for a reason. And she is in a better place. She's not suffering anymore. And those things actually have helped me because I don't want to see my mom suffer. Even if she did go off the chemo and, lived a life without chemo or still was on chemo, she still isn't living her quality of life.
Mm,
It's about quality of life. So I'm just thankful for the way that, you know, I could have that mindset of, what, things happen for a reason, and I'm going to start attracting things I want in my life and not worry about the things I don't want. I'm going to, start, living in my power and using that, and and just being happy for things that happen. I'm grateful for the lead up to the struggles that I had leading up to my mom's death because I never really
mhm,
experienced grief before. So I really am in a way thankful that I had a little bit of taste of that with Kobe and understanding that this is death and that it's okay to talk about. And I've learned that we need to talk about it because death is inevitable and it will happen to all of us at one point or another. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And the
So,
when. Hmm.
yeah. So it's, I think, I don't know, I'm grateful for the opportunity to um, live this now and understand this now at 32 years old and, kind of gain the wisdom of what grief brings. And my boyfriend always says adversity builds character. I mean, he said that when I
Hmm.
was going through struggles, you know, even before this year, like a couple of years ago, with my mom being diagnosed. Adversity builds character, and it's so true. It's so true. Um, and I'm thankful for these challenges because that's what launches us into greatness, truly.
Mm, mm.
Um, so I
Oh,
yeah, I'm just thankful that
so beautiful. So gratitude, being really gratitude has been your real pivot, like your not pivot, the anchor that has been able to help you through this grief has being in a state of gratitude and watching your mindset has been really what's helped you.
yes, and
Hmm.
obviously the health aspects as well with um, facial reflexology and gua sha. It's all, they're all pieces of the healing puzzle, right? It's all pieces of that. And yes, gratitude. I mean, we had it from the start before my mom died. I'm so grateful I could even grieve her before she died. I mean, that's like such a
Mhm,
gift. Who gets to sit and lay with their mom who's dying?
mhm,
Like, I
mhm,
just feel like with no worries, no social media, no job to tune into,
mhm,
with nothing. Like, I had nothing at that point but my mom and that present
mhm,
moment. I mean, I'm so grateful for that. That's, I just, it's sucks that this had to happen. Like, I miss my mom every day and I hate the emotions sometimes that I go through of anger and frustration and like resentment almost sometimes. I get resentful
mhm,
towards people who
mhm,
have their moms still, but I'm in the end the foundation of it is gratitude. It really is. You just have to go back to gratitude.
mhm. Oh, so wise and so young and so wise. And you've just said so many beautiful things. Thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing with us your journey and all these struggles, but also all this beautiful growth. And
Thank
then, do
you.
you want to say quickly your Instagram handle, and I'll make sure to put that in the notes
Oh, sure.
so that people can follow you. Because by the way, she gives honestly amazing health and wellness tips. So you will learn about the water ionizer that she mentioned. You'll learn about gua sha. Am I saying it right again? Did I
Yes,
say it right?
yes, you are.
You'll learn. Yeah, I have to learn. You'll learn about reflexology. You'll learn about so many healthy recipes. All about looking into labels too when you're looking. So for sure, follow her Instagram. And I don't know if you have any other uh, page or anything else.
Nope. Sandy Spice. You can find me there. I do have a website explaining a little bit more about water and stuff. But yeah, you can mostly. It's just my Instagram.
Instagram. And Sandy is
Why?
Saundy and then Spice
Yes,
because she's spicy.
exactly. My old Instagram was Shorty Sandy, but
uh,
because that
no.
technically still exists, Instagram
Oh,
wouldn't let me use that name because it still exists
got
somewhere
it.
in the interwebs. So I had to come up with a different name.
No, I like spice. Plus, because you also talk sometimes, regarding food and stuff, so it's good with the spice too.
Yes,
There's like
felt
some
like a
cinnamon spice and
yeah.
nutmeg and all the spices that come to not
Yes,
only your personality, but
that should be people's medicine cabinet is spices. So it totally
there we go.
ties together. I feel like
Ginger, go to ginger,
yeah,
cinnamon.
food as medicine. That's what
Okay,
I'm about.
there we
So
go. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much again, my
thanks so
dear,
much, Kendra.
for everything that you've shared. And I look forward to continuing our friendship that started through Instagram. And I'm sure again you'll have a lot of people reach out to you. I am sure regarding all the different tips that you shared too about health and wellness. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Kendra. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.